They say Taylor Swift was reprogrammed before the Eras tour. But what if I told you it wasn't just a rumor? What if I told you I was there, watching as she changed before my very eyes? This wasn't a transformation. It was something darker, something no one was meant to see. I saw it, and now I can't keep it to myself any longer. The Taylor you thought you knew is gone. What you're about to hear is the truth behind the eerie silence, the strange behavior, and the terrifying reality of what happened to her. It starts with the first day she walked in. I wasn't supposed to see it. I shouldn't have been there. But somehow, I was, and now I can't unsee it. It's been months, but the images are still so vivid in my mind that sometimes I can't sleep, can't think, can't escape the nightmare. I don't know who needs to hear this or why it's taken me so long to speak, but something has to be said. And if it's too late, if this goes unheard, then at least I'll know I tried to do the right thing. You've heard the whispers, right? The rumors about Taylor before the Eras tour. People said she wasn't the same, that something happened to her. They said she was reprogrammed, but they had no idea just how true that was. No idea what happened behind closed doors. I thought maybe it was all a sick joke, something exaggerated by the press or by jealous insiders. But when I saw it with my own eyes, when I was a part of it, I realized how wrong I'd been. I worked on the tour staff, not high up, just behind the scenes. Transport, security, logistics. I wasn't close enough to know every detail, but I was close enough to notice things that didn't make sense. The things that no one else seemed to care about. The little cracks in the facade. At first, it was subtle. The late night rehearsals, the endless checks on everything from the sound to the lighting to the choreography. It was what you'd expect from any big tour, right? But something about Taylor's presence started to feel off. It was like she wasn't fully there. She'd show up, smile, wave, and go through the motions. But the energy she once had, the spark, was slowly dimming. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but I could feel it. Something was wrong. I remember the first time I saw her walk into the rehearsal room after being away for a while. The air in the room shifted, like a chill had just settled over us. She looked fine, beautiful, confident, like she was ready to conquer the world. But I couldn't shake this feeling that she wasn't herself. She looked empty, no real warmth behind her eyes. It was like she was on autopilot walking through the motions, but she was somewhere else, and I could see it. No one else seemed to care. Maybe they didn't notice, or maybe they didn't want to, but I noticed, and it sent a wave of unease through me. Then there was that odd detail. The way she kept her gaze fixed on the ground as she walked past the crew, like she was trying to avoid any human connection. She didn't greet anyone, no smiles, no quick chats. She didn't even make eye contact, just like a shadow moving through the room. The only time she spoke was when the cameras were on. That was when the Taylor everyone knew would surface. Charming, witty, playful. But the second the spotlight faded, she was back to being this thing I didn't recognize. It's hard to explain the feeling. It was like looking at someone you've known for years, but not really knowing them anymore. Like the essence of who they were had been peeled away, layer by layer, until there was just this perfect shell. And when she sang, when the music filled the room, it was off. It sounded perfect. Her voice as beautiful as ever. But the soul behind it, gone. Just empty notes floating through the air. couldn't put it into words, not at first. But I knew. I could feel it in my bones. This wasn't Taylor. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe I was just overthinking it. Maybe she was just tired, stressed, burned out. But that's the thing. This wasn't just stress. This wasn't normal. It was something else, something darker. One night, after a particularly long rehearsal, I was walking back to the staff area when I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. I thought she had gone to her dressing room for the night, but I was wrong. There she was, standing outside, her back turned to the rest of the crew, talking to someone I couldn't see. There was something eerie about the way she spoke, like she was listening to instructions. And the way she responded, mechanical, flat. I swear to you, her voice was the same, but the words didn't feel like they were coming from her. It wasn't until later that night that the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. I had seen her, the real her, not the Taylor everyone adored, not the performer we all knew, but something else. And that's when I understood. I had seen the moments, the small cracks that no one else noticed, add up to something much, much darker. And I wasn't the only one who noticed. One of the crew members, a tech assistant who had been working with her for years, pulled me aside. He was shaking, his voice barely above a whisper. She's not the same. They're doing something to her. He didn't say more, just that. He looked over his shoulder, making sure no one else was listening, and then he walked away. I didn't know what to make of it at the time, but in hindsight, I know exactly what he meant. Now, I need to make something clear. I don't know who they are. I don't know how far this goes or who's behind it. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And it wasn't just the stress of a big tour. This was something else, something I shouldn't have seen. And it didn't stop there. No, it only got worse. But I didn't know what to do. I thought about quitting, about walking away and pretending I'd never seen any of it. But I couldn't unsee the way she looked at me when our eyes met in those brief moments. It was like she was begging for help, but there was nothing I could do. Everything had already been set in motion. The first time I saw her after that night, she was different. Not physically, but there was something about her that wasn't right. I was about to find out just how far this had all gone, and just how far they were willing to push her. It wasn't long before I understood. What I had seen, what I had felt, was only the beginning. What I found out next changed everything. I didn't expect to be there. It wasn't planned. But when the door to the rehearsal room swung open, I found myself stepping into an atmosphere that felt strangely welcoming, at least at first. The space was huge, spacious enough to hold an army of dancers, technicians, and equipment. But as I stood there, I noticed how neatly everything was arranged. The floor was polished to a mirror sheen, and the walls were lined with fresh, white curtains that billowed just slightly with the air conditioning. Everything had been perfectly curated. At first glance, it all seemed to belong. It was the kind of space you'd expect before a big performance, pristine and controlled. But there was something about it that felt almost too intentionally perfect. Nothing was out of place. The music was playing softly in the background, low enough that it almost felt like background noise, like it wasn't really there, but just an expectation to fill the silence. The air smelled faintly of new leather and freshly polished wood, clean and sharp. It should have been comforting, I guess. After all, I was just doing my job. I was there to observe the preparations, keep an eye on the logistics. Nothing was supposed to feel off. I took a deep breath as I stepped further inside. A few members of the crew were scattered around, talking quietly among themselves. Some were adjusting the lighting rigs. Others were checking the sound setup. All of them seemed to be going about their business without much urgency. It was the calm before the storm. Before Taylor was set to walk through those doors. Before the energy would shift from peaceful to electric. It was normal. It should have been. But as I moved through the room, a tiny unease began to settle in my chest. Something in the way the air felt, so cool and controlled, it didn't sit right. It was like walking into a space that was designed to look natural, but felt more like a scene from a play. Too perfect, like every angle, every object, was put in place to create the illusion of normalcy. I brushed it off. Maybe it was the sterile environment. Maybe I was just tired. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Something about the quietness. It was too quiet, like it was waiting for something to happen. The room felt large, too large. The distance between the back wall and the front stage felt immense. It was like standing on the edge of a vast, empty cavern. There were no echoes in the air, no hum from the fluorescent lights above. It felt almost dead. Yet the lights and air conditioning were all working just fine. Everything seemed to be in perfect condition, as if the space had been suspended in time, untouched by the chaos of the world outside. I found a quiet corner, out of the way. The crew didn't pay much attention to me, which was exactly what I wanted. I felt the weight of the silence wrap itself around me, pulling me deeper into the room. But there was something off in the way I moved. Like the floor beneath me was too smooth, like my steps were too loud, even though I wasn't making a sound. The strange thing was, I hadn't even seen her yet. Taylor wasn't there yet. She wasn't even supposed to be arriving for another half hour. But the atmosphere in the room was so thick with anticipation, I could already feel her presence. It hung in the air like a thick fog that never quite settled, waiting for her arrival. I shifted on my feet, glancing over the set. What little of it there was. A single microphone stand, a couple of backup dancers rehearsing some small movements, and, of course, a massive video screen that hung behind the stage. The kind of setup that screamed professionalism, but didn't quite feel alive. The walls were lined with mirrors, but there was nothing to reflect. Nothing that seemed real. Just empty spaces waiting to be filled. I caught myself staring into one of the mirrors, watching my reflection shift in the glass. But something about it made me feel disconnected. The surface was pristine, but the edges, where the light faded into the corners, felt almost too sharp. A loud clap echoed through the silence, and my gaze snapped toward the door. I froze. It was her. She stepped in as though it were a performance, moving through the door like she was walking on a stage, perfectly poised, like she'd rehearsed the entire entrance. But I noticed the difference immediately. The way she moved, it wasn't effortless, it was calculated. Every step was too precise. Every glance seemed preordained, like she had rehearsed this exact moment. Her eyes never quite met anyone's gaze. The other crew members were too busy to notice, too immersed in their work, but I could see it. That distance. It was as if she didn't belong there, as if she was just another part of the setup. She wasn't just stepping into a room, she was filling it. The air thickened again, but this time, it wasn't the anticipation of a show starting. No, it was something more sinister. I saw her pause at the entrance, almost as if she were checking the room, making sure it was perfect, like it had to be exactly the way it was supposed to be. Then, she moved forward, slowly, methodically, without a word. And that's when it hit me. She was acting. She wasn't living. I swallowed hard, my chest tight with the realization. I hadn't seen it at first, not in the way I had wanted to, but now there was no denying it. It wasn't just the way she moved, the way she looked at everyone like they weren't even there. It was the way her body carried her. It was like she was going through the motions, but none of it was real. It was all controlled. The crew didn't seem to notice. They kept working, fiddling with lights, adjusting the sound, all while she stood there, watching them, waiting. But there was no life behind her eyes. I had to look away. I had to tear my gaze from her because it felt like she was looking straight through me, into me. I took a few steps back, trying to find my footing again. The tension in the room seemed to double, thickening around me until it felt like I couldn't breathe. She was here now, but it didn't feel right, not even close. Her presence was like an illusion, a carefully constructed facade that I couldn't unravel, but I had to. I had to figure out what had happened, what they had done to her before it was too late. I watched her step onto the stage. The crew started moving around her, adjusting the set and props, making sure everything was in its place, but I couldn't stop looking at her. She was standing there, smiling, and I knew that whatever had happened to her, it was only going to get worse. What I saw next will haunt me forever. I had only been in the room a few minutes when the first flicker of unease hit me. A crawling sensation along my neck that made my skin prickle for no reason. Everything seemed normal. Polished floors reflecting soft light. Curtains swaying gently with the vent's draft. A faint hum from the speakers. And yet, something felt off. Like a vibration running through the walls themselves. A guest arrived soon after, someone I didn't recognize, polite, understated, dressed like someone accustomed to celebrity entourages. Then they looked at me, slowly, deliberately, their eyes dark, unreadable, lingering in a way that carried a silent warning. My chest tightened, but I couldn't look away. Trapped by that gaze, trying to decipher its meaning. As I shifted my eyes, a door at the far end of the room caught my attention. Plain, white, unmarked, with a simple lock, yet it stood out unnaturally, as if it was hiding something vital. The walls were lined with furniture and equipment, but this door seemed deliberately protected, humming with importance I couldn't explain. I tried to dismiss it, probably just a storage closet. But something about the lock glinting under the lights made my skin crawl. Taylor moved through the room like a shadow, steps measured, posture stiff. She smiled at the crew, polite, controlled, but her eyes were empty. Every gesture felt rehearsed, like she had been instructed on how to move, when to nod, when to look away. She paused, glancing at the locked door. Her expression faltered for a fraction of a second before she straightened, masking it. That blink, however brief, left a lingering chill in the air, a secret weight I couldn't ignore. The staff were just as strange, efficient, precise to the point of obsession, every movement artificially timed. A technician adjusted a light, paused, and nodded at nothing. A production assistant handed her water, hesitated, almost rehearsing the motion before she lifted the glass. The room's rhythm was unnervingly exact, every interaction guided by a script invisible to me. The unease built, gnawing at my chest. Something here was not ordinary, and I could feel it in every movement. The temperature seemed to shift, warm one moment, suddenly cool the next, like a draft slipping under a door I hadn't noticed. Goosebumps rose on my arms. The hum of the ventilation dipped and rose, subtle yet irregular, almost breathing with the room itself. I glanced around, trying to convince myself it was just fatigue, but the distortions were deliberate. They were communicating something I couldn't yet name. A faint scraping from the locked door caught my attention. My head snapped toward it, heart hammering. The room remained otherwise silent, but the scrape repeated, hesitant, irregular. Inside? Outside? I couldn't tell, and that uncertainty was worse than any clear threat. My footstep on the polished floor squeaked, amplifying every tiny sound and heightening my awareness. Other details surfaced. A glass on a table with fingerprints too neat to be casual. A chair slightly askew, angled as though someone moved it carefully and then froze. The air smelled faintly of perfume, layered with a chemical tang. Sterile, sharp, like it had been prepared with intent. Taylor paused again near the corner, jaw tightening, scanning the room as though confirming something invisible. Then she moved away with unnerving smoothness, leaving a trace of unease, like a shadow lingering. I tried to anchor myself in normality. Rehearsals were tense, staff precise, but this tension wasn't ordinary. The perfect alignment of furniture, the over-sanitized surfaces, the temperature shifts, the soft, deliberate sounds. They all hinted at something orchestrated, something deliberate that I couldn't articulate. My hands clenched, pressing into my palms for reassurance. This was real. I wasn't imagining it. A crew member passed by, nodding politely, but it didn't feel human. Their eyes were blank, rehearsed, guided by an invisible hand, their intelligence monitored and measured. The locked door drew me again. My gaze kept returning. The occasional scrape, the faint shift of air around it, the glint of the lock. It all suggested the space beyond was alive in a way the rest of the room wasn't. Taylor's lips moved slightly, whispering to herself without sound. Her head turned just enough that I felt her awareness, even though she wasn't looking at me directly. I froze. Her precision, the imperceptible rhythm of her movement made my stomach churn. The mirrors reflected everything, but shadows lurked in the corners, unnatural and deep, like the room had hidden layers. Something shifted there when I blinked, subtle but deliberate, aware of my gaze. I tried to step back, to leave, but a deeper dread pulled me forward. Each step felt heavier, loaded with anticipation, crossing a line into something I wasn't meant to witness. The air thickened, dense with expectation. The ventilation's hum became oppressive, pressing against my chest. Taylor stood motionless, perfectly poised, mid-gesture, warmth and recognition absent. Only precise stillness. Each breath of mine magnified in contrast. I realized then, this was the first true layer of the rehearsal's reality. Everything outwardly normal. Yet the room itself was alive with something I could not name. Orchestrated, before I had arrived. On the far side of the room, the mysterious door's lock glimmered faintly under the lights, as if acknowledging me, daring me closer. My heart raced. I whispered to myself that it was nothing. Deep down, I knew it was everything. The moment stretched, taut and heavy with unspoken warnings, until the soft shuffle of footsteps drew my gaze back to Taylor. That's when I understood. The unease I had felt so far was only the beginning. Something far worse waited behind that locked door. I didn't realize it at first, but something had shifted. The room had changed while I wasn't looking. One moment, it felt like any other rehearsal space, controlled, predictable, even calm. And the next, it was like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting. I could feel the weight of the air pressing down, subtle at first, just a whisper of tension, but enough to make my skin crawl. Taylor was in the center of the room, moving through the same motions she had been rehearsing all afternoon. Her smile, as always, was flawless, but her eyes told a different story. They were too steady, too measured, and the focus behind them was unnatural. Not concentration, not nervous energy. Something else entirely. Something I couldn't name. And then it happened. I saw the reflection in one of the mirrors lining the far wall. At first I thought it was my imagination, a trick of the lights, but it wasn't me. The reflection of Taylor wasn't in sync with her movements. Her body was moving slightly out of rhythm with the way she looked in the mirror. Every step she took on the floor didn't quite match the reflection. It lagged, like the image was just a frame behind reality. My stomach dropped, and I froze. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the ventilation. But it wasn't just that. A subtle vibration, almost like the floor itself was humming in tandem with her movements, pulsed under my feet. It was rhythmic, deliberate, almost mechanical, but faint enough that I questioned whether I was imagining it. Then came the sound, a low, almost imperceptible clicking, soft, uneven, like something tapping against metal. I glanced around, but there was nothing out of place. The crew continued their work as if nothing had happened. The lights didn't flicker, the instruments didn't shift, and yet the clicking continued, echoing faintly against the polished floor. I tried to convince myself it was just a tool being adjusted, a loose piece of equipment, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Taylor stopped mid-step. Her head tilted slightly to the side, a fraction of a second longer than natural, and her eyes scanned the room. Not at anyone in particular, just across it. And then, without any warning, her body stiffened. Her movements froze mid-gesture. I could see her hands suspended in the air, fingers curled as if she had been caught in the middle of a delicate motion. And then, it shifted. Her smile faltered for the first time that day. Just a twitch, barely noticeable, but it made my chest tighten. And in that moment, a chill ran through the room, like the temperature dropped by several degrees, though I could see no vents opening or closing, no drafts moving. My skin prickled, and I felt the hair along my arms rise as though something unseen had swept past me. I took a step back, trying to ground myself, and my foot hit something soft. A folded piece of paper slid across the floor as if it had moved on its own. I bent down to pick it up, heart hammering, and saw that it wasn't a note from a crew member. The handwriting was wrong. Precise, almost clinical, but not human. Every letter was perfectly shaped, uniform, as if written by a machine trying to imitate a person. Before I could process it, a faint whisper echoed through the room. Not from any person nearby, not from anyone I could see. It was low, almost inaudible, yet it carried across the room, and I could swear it was saying my name. I jerked my head in every direction, but no one was there. Only the soft glow of the overhead lights and the reflections in the mirrors. And then the locked door, the one I'd noticed earlier, shifted slightly. Not enough to open, just a movement, subtle but deliberate, like it had sensed my attention. The metal of the lock glinted as if acknowledging me, as if aware of my gaze. My pulse spiked, my breath coming in short, shallow bursts, and I realized I was shaking, though I couldn't tell if it was fear or anticipation. Taylor moved again, smoothly, perfectly, but the unnatural stiffness had returned. Every step, every gesture was precise in a way that was almost surgical. I tried to speak to a crew member nearby, to anchor myself, to ground what I was seeing in normality, but the words stuck in my throat. My mouth moved, my voice caught, and all I could manage was a strained whisper to myself. Something is wrong. And it wasn't just her. The staff surrounding her, the people I had trusted to maintain the rehearsal's rhythm, were acting differently too. Their motions were too perfect, their timing too exact, and their eyes. They never lingered, never flickered. Every glance, every nod, every adjustment was executed with mechanical precision, as if invisible strings guided them. Then it happened again. The mirrors. I saw Taylor's reflection separate itself slightly from reality, a half step behind. And for a heartbeat, there were two versions of her in the room. The real one, moving through rehearsed gestures, and another that lingered, staring, watching. I recoiled instinctively, backing toward the edge of the room, heart hammering against my ribs. The air seemed thicker now, almost viscous, as if it had been infused with tension itself. The faint scent of leather and polish mixed with something metallic, something sharp that made my stomach twist. I felt lightheaded, but I couldn't leave. Not yet. I had to see it, and had to understand. The sense of dread was crawling over me, slow and deliberate, coiling around my chest until it felt impossible to breathe normally. A faint hum began to rise, almost imperceptibly at first, vibrating through the floor, through my bones. The sound was rhythmic, unnervingly consistent, but it didn't correspond to anything in the room. I tried to shake it off, but the sensation burrowed deeper, like a pulse synced with some hidden, unseen mechanism. Then Taylor's hand twitched. Not a normal movement, but sharp, jerky, too quick to be natural. I stared, frozen as her head followed the movement with perfect alignment, almost as if she were being guided from somewhere else, some invisible force controlling her every gesture. I realized then that what I had sensed in the first moments of the room, the subtle offness, the mechanical precision, the sterile perfection, wasn't just discomfort or paranoia. It was evidence. Proof that the rehearsal, the environment, even the people around her, were orchestrated for a purpose I couldn't yet comprehend. And the whisper returned, softer this time, more insistent, almost pressing into my mind rather than my ears. My hair stood on end. I swallowed, my throat dry, and though my eyes darted everywhere, I saw no one. Nothing. Just the polished floor, the glowing lights, and the locked door. trembling faintly as if acknowledging me again. I tried to remind myself that this was a rehearsal, that the strange occurrences had explanations, that I was just overthinking. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just me. My pulse raced as every small detail compounded. The mirrors, the locked door, the whispers, the mechanical precision, the subtle vibrations through the floor. The room was alive with something that defied sense, and I had been caught in its orbit. Taylor paused, turned slowly toward me, and for just a second, I felt the tiniest flicker in her expression. Something human. Something desperate. And then it vanished. She resumed her precise, rehearsed movements, like a machine executing a flawless sequence. I backed away slowly, trying to steady myself. Every instinct screamed to leave, but curiosity, or perhaps fear itself, kept me rooted. I realized the moment I was in wasn't just unsettling. It was a warning. A signal that what I had been sensing all along was real and far more dangerous than I had dared imagine. And as the humming beneath my feet grew louder, the mirrors reflected her twice. The locked door quivered faintly, and her eyes momentarily flicked to mine. I understood. This was no ordinary rehearsal. Something was happening here that I wasn't meant to see. And whatever it was only the beginning. I took a shuddering breath and whispered to myself, heart hammering, knowing the next moments would change everything. Something far worse was waiting just beyond my vision. The moment I crossed the threshold into the hallway, I felt it. The shift. Not the air, not the lighting. Something deeper. The walls and floor seemed warped, as if the room I'd left had been a carefully built illusion, and this was the raw, unfinished reality behind it. My breathing was too loud, too clear, as if my body were reminding me I was still here, still me. But something inside me was fraying. My feet moved faster than I wanted, carrying me toward a place I didn't want to go. My heart pounded, each thud reverberating in my skull. The hallway stretched ahead, long, empty, unnervingly still. At the far end stood the door that had haunted the edge of my mind. Now it felt more present, beckoning with quiet insistence, as though it had been waiting for me all along. I should have turned back, but something nameless pulled me forward. The lights flickered, casting broken shadows across the walls. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw movement at the far end, but when I blinked, it was gone. My breath caught. Dread pooled in my stomach. My footsteps echoed back at me, too loud, like a warning. I raised my hand toward the knob, but something stopped me. Not the lock, not the chill in my bones. The whisper. Soft, barely audible. Help me. I froze. The floor tilted under me. My skin prickled. It wasn't Taylor's voice. It wasn't anyone I knew. The sound felt like a warning, a cry from something buried in this place. I swallowed hard. I had to know. The voice lingered, sliding into every corner of my thoughts. I turned the knob slowly. The door creaked open. The cold didn't hit me first. The lack of air did. The room felt sealed, cut off from the world, small, cramped, too tight for a rehearsal space. The walls were bare, the floor scuffed. An old chair sat in the corner, positioned like it had been moved over and over. The smell was wrong. Not stale, but like something had been kept here too long. Air unmoving, memory rotting. Then the wall caught my eye. It was too perfect. Sharp lines, no dirt, no imperfections. A blank canvas waiting for something or someone to fill it. Behind the silence was a low, persistent buzzing. In the far corner, half hidden under cloth, sat a box. I knew I shouldn't, but I went to it anyway, hands trembling. I pulled the lid open. Inside lay an old tape recorder plugged into a strange machine. Cords twisted and knotted as if someone had tried to bury it. Before I could stop myself, I pressed play. Static hissed. The room bent around the sound, edges of my vision warping as if the noise were distorting reality itself. And then the voice. Taylor's voice, but not. Wrong, too flat, too mechanical. You are the music. You are the show. You are nothing. The words dragged like they were being pulled through a machine. Then another voice, one I didn't recognize, cut through the static. We will fix you. Every hair on my neck rose. I couldn't breathe. I slammed the button to stop it, but the words still vibrated in the air, rattling in my skull. My hands shook. Fear or shock. I couldn't tell. Everything in me screamed to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The meaning behind the words pressed down on me. Fix you. I had to know what that meant. I looked back at the door. It had never felt farther away. The wall shifted. Not visibly at first, just a sense of movement under its surface. The buzzing grew louder. The walls trembled, not from vibration, but from anticipation, as though something dark was waiting for me to act. It was too much. My mind began to crack. I turned. The buzzing stopped. Silence, and then they whisper again. Louder. Help me. That broke me. I took one last look at the box. The machine. The wall that felt like it might swallow me whole. Then I bolted, slamming the door behind me. But the room followed me anyway, echoing in my skull, clawing at the seams of my reality. I don't know what I uncovered, but I know one thing now. This isn't a rehearsal, it's a trap. And whatever it is, it's only just begun. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest as the door slammed shut behind me. I had to get away. I had to get away. The walls felt like they were closing in, pushing in on me, forcing the air out of my lungs. My feet were moving, but my body was heavy, as if the floor itself was fighting me. Every step felt like it took twice the effort, but I couldn't stop, shouldn't stay there. The room, the walls, the sound, that voice, it was all too much. I could still hear it in my head. Help me. The words replayed in a loop that spun tighter and tighter with every breath I took. My hands were shaking, gripping the edge of the hallway for support, but there was nothing there. Nothing to hold on to. I could feel the cold sweat on my skin, a chill that was more than just physical. It was like something was inside me now, gnawing at my insides, creeping into my thoughts. My heart hammered faster, erratically, as I reached for the exit, my fingers slick with fear. The door, the one I had opened earlier, felt miles away now. Every inch of the space between me and freedom stretched farther, like it was resisting my escape. I froze. My foot was mid-step, and I couldn't make it move. My body refused to obey. The door. The locked door. I couldn't shake the image of the room, the black box, the machine. My eyes closed involuntarily, and I saw it again. The reflection of Taylor's movements. Wrong, distorted, mechanical. And that voice, it was her. It wasn't just the tape. It wasn't just some malfunctioning recording. They had done something to her, something that turned her into this. I could feel the panic rise up in my throat, hot and suffocating. My chest tightened, constricted, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. I gasped, struggling to draw a breath, but it felt like my lungs were filled with lead. The walls were too close, pressing in on me, the ground beneath me uneven, shifting. I couldn't see straight. I couldn't think straight. The world around me was spinning, and all I could hear was that voice. Help me. A part of me wanted to run. No, needed to run. But where would I go? I had already seen too much. I couldn't go back to my life like everything was normal. I couldn't forget what I'd just witnessed. The door loomed ahead, an unseen barrier. The way it had beckoned me, the way it called to me. It wasn't just a door. It was a portal, a gateway to the truth I wasn't ready to understand. A truth I wasn't sure I ever wanted to. But I had opened it. I had walked in. And now I couldn't walk away. But then something else hit me. A heavy, suffocating feeling that twisted in my gut. I wasn't alone. It wasn't just the locked room. It wasn't just the voice. There was something else. Something standing in the corner of the hallway, just beyond my line of sight. I could feel it. Oh, it was watching me. Waiting for me to make my next move. I snapped my head toward the sound. Footsteps, faint but unmistakable. And then a figure appeared, moving from the shadows. It wasn't Taylor. It wasn't anyone I recognized. Just a figure, tall and slender, dressed in dark clothing that blended into the surroundings. I couldn't see their faces, but I could feel their eyes locked on me, like they could see inside me, like they could read every fear, every doubt that had been racing through my mind. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Every part of me screamed to run, to get away for whatever was standing there. But I was frozen in place, caught between terror and confusion. This wasn't just someone in the hallway. This was someone who knew what I had seen, knew what I had done, and I couldn't escape. The figure stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. My mind screamed, but my body refused to listen. I could see nothing on their faces, just the black outline of them moving toward me, as if they had been waiting for this exact moment. They didn't speak, but I could feel their presence in the space around me, like the air had thickened, weighed down by their silence. It was suffocating. And then it happened. The whisper came again. You shouldn't have seen. The words chilled me to the bone. They weren't spoken by the figure, not in any way I could understand, but they were there, inside my head, clear as day. I couldn't move. My legs felt like stone, rooted to the floor beneath me. My throat tightened, a knot of fear rising in my chest. They were watching me. A cold sweat dripped down my back. My mind raced, thoughts spiraling out of control. I couldn't process this, couldn't make sense of it. Everything I had seen, everything I had felt, was breaking down. What was real? What wasn't? The figure moved again, and I couldn't stop my body from reacting. I turned and bolted. I ran. I don't know how I moved. My feet felt numb, disconnected from my mind, but my body pushed itself forward, away from the shadow, away from the voice. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I felt the weight of the hallway pressing in around me, the dark corners closing in as I passed them, but all I could think about was getting out, getting as far away as possible. I reached the exit door, My hand slammed against the handle, but it didn't budge. It was locked. Locked. I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten that I was trapped in here, trapped in this place, with them. I turned around, heart pounding, my chest heaving. The shadow was gone. The hallway was empty. But I couldn't shake the feeling, the sensation that I wasn't alone, that I had never been alone. My heart raced as I stood frozen in front of the door, hands shaking, skin clammy with sweat. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. All I knew was that whatever was happening here, whatever I had stumbled into, it was far worse than anything I could have imagined. And then, from behind me, I heard the softest click, the faintest whisper of metal on metal, like the turn of a lock. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to. But deep down, I knew that the door was no longer the only thing keeping me in this nightmare. Something far worse was coming, and I had no idea how I was going to escape it. The door was no longer an escape. It was a trap, and I walked right into it. I keep telling myself I'm safe, that what happened was just a fluke, I escaped. But every time I close my eyes, I hear it again. The whispers, the clicks, her smile, her eyes following me like she knew everything before I did. Nights I wake up in cold sweat. Sure, I'm still in that hallway, still hearing the door lock. Maybe I should have walked away. Maybe it's too late. Whatever they did isn't done with me. Something inside me will never be the same. And every time I think I'm free, I feel it creeping back like it never left.